Hi, I will be going over my graphic about Amazon today. So this is the infographic I developed over the course of the quarter. It informs the viewer about various aspects of Amazon's supply chain and distribution network, including the process, growth, and reach. This was the visual model I used in developing my infographic. As you can see, it has a lot of visual elements in each section. The divider lines between each section consist of two dark solid lines with text in between and are approximately 1 point in thickness. On colored backgrounds, it also uses solid white lines with an approximate thickness of 0.5. Leader lines are primarily used to label graphs and are short solid lines that match the color of the element they are labeling. Their thickness is approximately 1 point. The style of the shapes used is relatively abstract with a little detail added. They are solid shapes with no outline, except in some cases where they occur on a colored background, where they have a white outline to emphasize them. These elements are 100% opaque and have a little bit of pattern added as necessary to give them detail. Text on white backgrounds are the same color as the element they are labeling, creating association between them, and then the second color is used to accentuate important information. On colored backgrounds, text does not use color association. The text is also placed directly next to the elements it labels. Precision labels are used in conjunction with leader lines to label bar chart type graphics. There are 5 different fonts used in this model. The first one is an italicized cursive font used in headings. My infographic uses the font Rochester to mimic this. The second font used is a wider all-cap serif with horizontal ball terminations, also used in headings. My infographic uses American Typewriter to mimic this. The third font used is Gurumukhi Sangam MN, which is used primarily as accompanying text to subtitles. This is a sans serif font with horizontal terminations and uses regular casing. The fourth font in my model is an italic sans serif used in subtext, and I use Avenir Light Oblique to make this. Finally, the last font found in my model is a narrow all-caps sans serif used to emphasize statistics and other important information, which I mimic by using the font Benchline. The layout of my model has a vertical orientation, with a clear starting section at the top that flows into a series of sequential sections. These sections have smaller subsections with pieces of information, and then end with a clear ending section. Most of the subsections are approximately half the width of their containing primary sections, creating left-right or bilateral symmetry within the graphic. The colors used in my graphic were the orange and yellow you could see very prominently in my color model, as well as various shades of gray found within it. This is an analogous color palette, which means that the colors are contained within a narrow wedge of the color wheel. These colors are bright and give a vibrant, energetic feel to the infographic. This is offset by the gray to make sure it doesn't overwhelm the viewer. Each graphic element is primarily made up of one color. This is my appearance display. I invoke the visual potential of appearance by using a multitude of shapes, color, and texture. Together, they take the form of a graphic where trucks are driving to a warehouse in order to pick up packages that are located behind the warehouse. The combination of these elements informs the reader that the graphic is about a distribution process, and by reading the accompanying text, they can confirm this. The map in the graph and the accompanying text beside it use color encoding. Selected states in the map are colored orange, and the text is also orange and talks about full-time associates located in certain states. The color encoding informs the reader that those associates are located in these orange states. Drawing from my color model, I use orange as the primary color in this graphic, with yellow and gray used in much smaller amounts. I also use the same all-caps, narrow, sans serif font that my typography model uses for primary information, with the number being proportionally larger to the rest of the text for emphasis. I use the same solid fill, no outline style of shapes that my model uses. My shapes also follow the same level of abstraction and realism in that they are very simple with only enough detail added to make it obvious what they are. The only line contained in this display is that in the center of the road, and I follow the dash style with medium weight that is used in my model. This is my numbers display. I invoke the visual potential of numbers by visually representing a dollar amount as the size of a mark. The farther to the right of my isotype display the bar reaches, the larger the amount it represents. The orange bar represents a dollar amount of shipping costs, while the gray represents a dollar amount of revenue. I further exploit the visual potential of numeric information by using the repeating figure of the package to represent the dollar amount in $5 billion increments. I used color encoding between the bars in the 2 isotype displays to indicate that they are representing the same category of information. Both the gray bars represent revenue, and both the orange bars represent shipping costs. In order to make this distinction clear, I added a key as well. I also used some amount of color encoding between the text with the statistic and the shipping cost bars. which are the same color to indicate that the text is explaining that piece of the visual. I mimic my color model by using orange to highlight the primary information in the display, with shades of gray being used as an accent. I mimic my typography model by using the narrow all-caps sans serif font for the section header and primary information, and then by using the smaller italicized sans serif font for the subtext. I maintain the visual language of my graphic by continuing to use solid fill icons with the same level of realism. I also follow the style of divider lines used in my model, which are two dark one-point lines with the narrow capitalized sans serif text contained between them. This is my location display. I exploit the visual potential of location by using geographic elements in my display to communicate the position of Amazon's warehouses in the United States. I also broke this information into 3 different maps to make the number of warehouses in each state very clear. I used color encoding to create an association between the text with the amount of warehouses in the highlighted states. They are both colored orange, which indicates that the warehouses the text is referring to are located in the following states. Furthermore, I colorized the word Amazon in the title in the same shade of orange, which reaffirms that all the highlighted information is in regards to Amazon. I maintain the use of orange and yellow as the primary colors used in my display, with gray used for accentuation. I also use yellow to colorize lines, which my color model does as well. This display drew on many of the fonts found in my typography model. I utilized the cursive font to accentuate the first word of the title sentence, similarly to my model, and then made the rest of the sentence have a bold, narrow sans serif. This was the same font that was used for the all-caps narrow sans serifs, simply in lowercase. Then, the primary information about the number of warehouses used the narrow all-caps sans serif as well as the second line on top of the maps. The first word of the descriptions of the maps was written in the wide all-caps serif font, and the subtext was written in a smaller, light, narrow sans serif font. I continue to follow the visual language of my model in the level of detail of my map. The map has a white outline to differentiate between states, which is the same treatment used for maps in my model, and they have a bounding box around them to separate them from bordering information. There is also an overlay of text over the map, which I use as well. This is my relationship display. I exploit the visual potential of relationships by showing the links between various stages of Amazon's fulfillment process. Each stage is represented as an individual icon, and they are linked together by arrows which show the directionality of the process. I continue to use the colors found in my model, but use yellow as the primary color for this display, with orange and gray accents. I also use orange lines, which can be found in my model as well. I continue to use the narrow all-caps sans serif font for the primary information in my display. I also mimic the multitude of fonts found in call-out boxes in my model, with most lines being in the narrow all-caps sans serif and only the single most important word being in the wider serif font. I continue to follow the style of divider lines found in my model, with the 2 dark one-point lines containing a section header in between them. I also use thin arrows with a small arrowhead composed of 2 lines as opposed to a triangle, which can be found in the corresponding section of my model as well. Finally, I mimic the style of the call-out boxes found in my model in order to explain the display. This is my time display. I exploit the visual potential of time by showing a sequence of events on a timeline and when they occur relative to each other. This capitalizes on the human perception of time as directional. I display 7 events that occurred in the development of Amazon's fulfillment network between 2009 and 2016. I use encoding in the color of the events to indicate their recency. The brightest orange shade is automatically processed as the most recent event due to the gradient. One limitation, however, is that I did not encode position with time. That is, the distance between each event is held constant and does not represent the amount of time that passed. I deviate from my color model a little in this display. I still use orange and yellow as my primary colors with gray text, but I added more colors along the spectrum from the yellow to orange in order to build the stepped gradient and show the progression of time. I experimented with using the shades found in my model instead of the gradient, but found that it confused people, as then the darkest orange ended up in the middle of the timeline, and viewers naturally interpreted that as the most recent event due to the intensity of the color. I continue to use the narrow all-caps sans serif for the section header and the primary information. Additional information in the subtext is written using the smaller italicized sans serif with regular casing, as found in my model. There was no timeline in my visual language model, so this display likely deviates from my model the most. However, I maintain the style of the divider lines found in my model, as well as the level of detail and realism in the icons. I also draw on the white circles containing colored icons, which are found in the last section of my model, but invert these to have white icons on a colored background. I maintain the visual hierarchy of my model by making sure each section flows from its preceding section in a logical order. The graphic starts out by introducing the size of Amazon's distribution network, then discusses its locations, then talks about its growth in terms of revenue and how they have optimized the supply chain in order to achieve this, and finally ends by discussing the evolution of this network. I maintain the vertical orientation found in my layout model by having stacked horizontal sections which leverage the viewer's natural propensity to read from top to bottom. I create unity within my display by repeating visual attributes. I primarily use orange and yellow for graphic elements and important information, with grays used for accents and body text. The package icon can also be found in numerous sections of the graphic, giving it a cohesive feel and making it clear that the different sections are related to each other. Unity is also maintained through the consistent abstract solid fill styling of icons and the heavy usage of the narrow all-cap sans serif font. As previously mentioned, I followed the vertical orientation of my layout model by stacking horizontal sections, which the viewer naturally reads from top to bottom. My layout model also has subsections within each section that are read vertically, which I made sure to include in my model as well. Finally, I added a title section at the top and a citation section at the bottom to mimic the clear beginning and ending that my model has. Most elements are center aligned within their containing section, but the overall graphic has a very left aligned feel to it due to the banner in the middle section. This is further reaffirmed by the left alignment of section headers, which can be found in my model as well. To summarize, I built an infographic regarding Amazon's distribution network this quarter to inform the viewer of its reach, growth, and process. I leveraged elements from a visual language, color, and layout model to determine its styling, and this is what I ended up with. Thank you.